This was the moment Diana Lovejoy collapsed in court after being found guilty of plotting to kill her ex-husband, Greg Mulvihill. Locked in a bitter custody battle over their young son, Lovejoy feared losing her boy and conspired with her firearms instructor Weldon McDavid Jr. to eliminate Mulvihill. In 2016, she lured her ex-husband to a remote dirt road where McDavid ambushed him with a rifle. Shot in the torso, Mulvihill survived by playing dead and calling 911. Investigators traced the attack back to Lovejoy and McDavid, and both were convicted. She received 26 years to life, while he was sentenced to 50 years. Doctors across the world have documented shocking cases of patients arriving in the ER with objects lodged deep inside their bodies. But one of the strangest in history involved a 5-pound dumbbell. The patient arrived in agonizing pain but refused to explain how it got there, forcing surgeons to perform a delicate operation to extract it. Britain's most prolific executioner, Albert Pierrepoint, spent 25 years hanging up to 600 criminals, but it was only his side hustle. By day he ran a pub where locals drank with him, knowing full well he was also the hangman. In 1950, one of his own regulars, a man he nicknamed Tish, was convicted of murder and sentenced to death, and it was Pierrepoint himself who placed the noose around his neck and carried out the execution. Morbid Facts, Part 772. MF Doom, the masked supervillain of hip-hop, died in a way just as mysterious as the persona he created. On Halloween Day in 2020, he passed away at 49, but his death was kept completely secret for 62 days. For 2 months, fans continued listening to his music and waiting for new projects, unaware that he was already gone. Then on New Year's Eve, his wife quietly announced his passing, but gave no cause of death or any further details. To this day, the circumstances remain undisclosed, sparking endless speculation. It felt strangely fitting. Doom built his entire identity around mystery and anonymity, sometimes even sending imposters to perform in his place. In the end, he died on Halloween, vanished in silence, and left behind one final mystery. In 1929, 6-year-old Carl Newton Mahan became the youngest person in American history to be charged with murder, then sat in a courtroom playing with a doll. The Kentucky boy had gotten into a fight with an 8-year-old named Cecil Van Hoos over a piece of scrap metal. Cecil reportedly slapped him, so Carl ran home, grabbed his father's shotgun, and blasted the older boy, killing him instantly. Because of the shocking nature of the crime, Carl was actually put on trial for murder, sitting in the courtroom so young that they had to give him toys to keep him calm. The jury found him guilty of manslaughter and sentenced him to 15 years in reform school, but the conviction was quickly overturned due to public outrage. Morbid Facts, Part 304. 28-year-old Brittany Zamora was an award-winning elementary school teacher from Arizona. That was until she was sentenced to 20 years in prison for raping one of her 13-year-old students. Her attorney blamed the student for the teacher's crimes, arguing that the boy was a teenager, not a child. A woman from Germany was sentenced to 7 years in prison after dropping her newborn baby daughter out of her apartment window. She apparently thought that having a child would ruin her career as an executive for Porsche. In 1996, Charles Whitman murdered 17 people with a sniper at the University of Texas before being killed by police. In a note he left behind, Whitman requested an autopsy since he felt something was seriously wrong with his brain. He'd been having severe fits of rage that he'd never experienced before and could not explain. The autopsy found that Whitman had a small tumor pressing up against his amygdala, the part of the brain that regulates fear and aggression. This likely contributed to his sudden erratic behavior. Morbid Facts, Part 771. Julie Andrews had one of the most iconic voices in Hollywood history, but one botched surgery destroyed it forever. Known for Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music, her flawless 4-octane soprano was considered untouchable. But in 1997, a simple procedure to remove harmless nodules went horribly wrong. Surgeons permanently mutilated her vocal cords, leaving her in agonizing pain just to speak. Andrews later sued the hospital and won, but no lawsuit could undo the damage, as the world's most beloved singing voice was silenced forever. This NASA scientist helped land humans on the moon, but his rockets were first built with slave labor in Nazi death camps. Wernher von Braun, the celebrated architect of the Apollo missions, once ran the V2 rocket program for Adolf Hitler. The rockets were manufactured using prisoners from the Dora Mittelbau concentration camp, who were typically starved, beaten, and worked until they died. Conditions were so brutal that over 20,000 prisoners were killed while making the rockets, far more than the rockets ever killed in combat. But after the war, von Braun wasn't punished. Instead, the US secretly brought him to America under Operation Paperclip, erased most of his Nazi past, and turned him into a national hero. Morbid Facts, Part 283. TV host Jimmy Savile was well known for his eccentric image and remarkable charity work through the BBC network. But after his death, it was discovered that Savile was one of Britain's most prolific predatory sex offenders, with over 300 potential victims over a 60-year span. There had been many allegations of this behavior during his lifetime, but his accusers were consistently ignored or discredited. In a 2009 interview with his biographer, Savile even defended viewers of CP, arguing that they didn't do anything wrong and are unfairly demonized. His victims were often patients at hospitals or psychiatric facilities, ranging from the age of 5 to 75. A woman in China used a pair of scissors to cut off her husband's willy while he was sleeping, after she found out he was sending naughty messages to another woman. While he was recovering in the hospital from the surgery that reattached it, she snuck into his room, cut it off again, and threw it out the window. Morbid Facts, Part 312. In June of 2020, YouTuber David Dobrik operated an excavator in a shallow Utah lake, swinging his friend Jeff Wittick by a rope attached to the machine. When Jeff's turn came, Dobrik spun him violently before stopping abruptly, apparently attempting to prank him, causing Jeff to slam into the heavy machinery and into the water. He briefly lost consciousness and was pulled from the lake in critical condition. The impact fractured his skull in 9 places, shattered his eye socket, broke his hip and foot, tore his leg ligaments, and nearly blinded him. Jeff spent months recovering, enduring at least 9 surgeries, and publicly revealed that David never checked in a single time after the accident. 2 years later, he sued Dobrik for $10 million, citing lifelong injuries, mounting medical expenses, and lost income. The dumbass stunt was originally intended for a vlog that never released. Dobrik later claimed that it was the worst thing that's ever happened to me, while insisting that it was Jeff's idea. Morbid Facts, Part 770. This haunting photo shows an early radiation therapy session from the 1930s, when doctors used x-rays to burn away skin diseases or tumors with terrifyingly primitive equipment. The patient's head was clamped perfectly still so doctors could fire high-dose radiation at specific areas of the face. Because the dangers of radiation were barely understood, patients often suffered brutal side effects, severe burns, scarring, hair loss, blindness, and even cancer years later. In some cases, radiation was even used to treat acne or blemishes, causing far more damage than the condition itself. In May of 1973, a man walked into a bank in Ontario with a rifle and a bomb wired inside his own mouth. The device was connected to a dead man's switch, meaning if he released the pressure or was killed, it would immediately explode. He calmly took hostages and demanded money, claiming there was another larger bomb hidden inside the bank. When he tried to leave the building with a bag of cash, police snipers opened fire. The moment he was hit, the switch released, detonating the bomb in his mouth and blowing up his head and upper body in front of everyone. Investigators later found a second device inside the bank containing 200 sticks of dynamite that could have wiped out the entire building, but it was luckily defused. The man carried several fake IDs and was so badly mutilated that he's never been identified.